Hello, this is Mr. Hupp, and I want to talk about lab safety. These are 20 rules that are big hitters for me. I know that you can go out there and find like the Flynn High School safety contract, and it's got some 55 rules for expected behaviors in a lab, be it physics, chemistry, or biology. And really, I just kind of want to get down to the important things for safety in my room. Safety is our #1 goal in my classroom, so we always need to be cognizant or paying attention to keeping yourself safe and those around you safe. So let's go over 20 rules that are very important. First rule is, if in doubt, you need to ask. A lot of the problems I've had with safety issues in my room stem from not understanding what they're supposed to be doing, or not understanding how to use a piece of equipment or some instructions. So if you have any doubts, ask your neighbors, ask me. Don't continue if you have doubts. Always ask. Conduct yourself in a responsible manner at all times in the lab. You guys know this. There's no room for horseplay and goofing around in the lab. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt somebody. You're going to break something. I expect you to behave in a reasonable manner at all times in my lab. Do not touch labware until instructed to do so. There are several classes that come through my room, and each class has different kinds of labware. And when you walk in and you see stuff on the counters that looks really cool and you want to put your hands on it, don't. Just leave it alone. Go to your chair, get ready for class. Look around by all means, but don't touch anything. If you start picking other stuff up, you are messing with someone else's projects or grades or my lab setup, and you're going to cost me time, and that's a problem. So don't touch labware until you're instructed to do so. And some of my labware looks like toys, so leave it alone. Don't touch projects that aren't yours. This again is another safety issue in that you could break something and get hurt, but also people are going to be working on projects. Some of the projects we run in my class, they last about a month, and if you're messing with those, you're messing with someone's grade, so don't mess with that. So don't touch stuff that's not yours, bottom line. Dress appropriately for laboratory work. Protect your body with clothing and shoes. Use your brains. Okay, so make sure when you come to class you are appropriately dressed and safe. You don't want to have loose, baggy clothes if we're working with tools. You don't want to have long hair like in a place where it could get tangled up. So if you have long hair, tie it back. It's always a good idea to wear closed shoes in any kind of lab environment so that if there are spills or drops or broken things, you don't have your naked toes sticking out and getting injured. So always dress appropriately for laboratory work. Sit on chairs, not on tables, and not on counters. You don't know what's been on the tables or the counters, so please sit only in chairs. Hand objects to people. This is always troublesome to me when I look across the room and someone says, "You need a calculator?" Yeah, and they take it and throw it like a football across the room. This is never safe. So in my room, there's no tossing things. Don't throw stuff across the room. Don't throw stuff across tables. You take it and hand it to people. Be courteous and safe. Unauthorized activities or investigations are prohibited. There is no freestyle lab. You're just wasting time. You have to write stuff down for it to count, right? So also this ties into following instructions and that sort of thing. So don't just come in and start trying to do things and mix this stuff together just to, quote unquote, see what will happen. That is strictly prohibited. Keep your work areas clean and neat, and keep walkways clear. We don't want to have accidents that are results from being sloppy or having stuff like draped across walkways and stuff like this. This includes charger cables. I don't want you to charge your computer by plugging it in on the wall and having that charger cable hanging across between the wall and the table. I will trip on it. Someone's going to trip on it. Something's going to get broken. go to the countertops and plug your computer in, and you can work there without causing a tripping hazard. So keep your work areas clean and neat. Keep your walkways clear. Report chemical spills and injuries immediately to the instructor. So this is another important safety thing. If something happens to someone or something gets spilled or broken, you need to let me know right away. I need to know what's happening in my room. I usually can figure out that something's going on just by listening to the tone of your conversations, but sometimes I can't. So if something gets broken or someone gets hurt or something gets spilled, let me know immediately. Removing chemicals and equipment from the lab is prohibited unless you are authorized by the instructor. This includes computers as well. That anything that is in my room needs to stay in my room. Don't take it out to go work on it unless I tell you to do so. Read lab and safety information and procedures ahead of time. Follow all verbal and written instructions. I will try to be very clear about instructions about how to do the labs or projects, what you need to do to keep yourself safe, and I expect you to read what is written and listen to the verbal instructions so that nobody gets hurt. When instructed to do so, you will wear personal protective equipment, including goggles, gloves, aprons, whatever is necessary to keep you safe. Double check. Be sure all materials are correct. This is especially true in chemistry. You can't just randomly start mixing things together, or if you have the wrong substance for your lab, you can get yourself into bad trouble just by using the wrong stuff. So always check to make sure what you're using is correct, that you have the correct equipment and you have the correct materials before proceeding with your project or experiment. Follow all directions for waste disposal. You don't just pour liquids down the sink. Sometimes that can cause problems, so I will give you very, very specific instructions for how to dispose of all of your wastes. Another thing is, if we're using hot plates or Bunsen burners and we're heating glass, you need to keep in mind that hot glass and cold glass look exactly the same. Glass can be hot enough to instantly burn you, and you wouldn't know it just by looking at it, so you can't tell. So always treat glass like it's hot. The instructor will clean up all broken glass. If something gets dropped and broken, for instance a beaker or a test tube or a flask, I expect that you will notify me immediately because something has been broken, and then I will clean up glass. I know you mean well, and I know that you can clean up glass at your home, but I don't want you to get cut on glass, so I will be responsible for cleaning up all the glassware that's broken. And accidents are going to happen. It's going to happen. Don't put your hands on it. Don't try to sweep it up. Let me clean it up. When preparing a solution, always add acid to water. So remember that, the 3 A's, always add acid. You always add acid to water. If you pour water into a strong acid, it will react violently and splash acid out of the container and possibly onto you, and that's not safe. So you always add acid to water. When the acid goes into the water, it diffuses and it spreads out evenly into the water, and it doesn't have that violent reaction. So always add acid. We may use sharp tools in my class. In some of my classes we absolutely have to use sharp tools, so you will use sharp tools carefully. And yeah, that's really poor English on my part. So use sharp tools carefully. Always cut away from yourself. Be cognizant of what's going on around you. You don't want to be where you slip and run into yourself or into your neighbor. So make sure that as whatever direction you're pulling the blade or pushing the blade, that if you slip, it's not going to hit you or anyone else. And if it's a tool that you open and close, like a box cutter or something like that, if it's not in your hand, it needs to be closed. I don't want to see blades open on a table because that's just inviting accidents. So I expect you to use sharp tools carefully. We will review careful use of sharp tools before we start working with them. And the last rule, if it is wet, and it's not yours, don't touch it. You have no idea what a liquid on a countertop is. It might be water. It might be an acid. It could be a strong base. It could be snot. It could be a little puke. Who knows? So if it's wet and it's not yours, keep your hands out of it, and we'll clean up appropriately. Okay, so that does it for the 20 rules in my room.